Welcome back to the Unfettering. Guys, I am super excited today. We have got a absolutely legendary guitar player joining us. He is the namesake of the band Thrailkill, and he has actually produced a ton of music as Mammoth. And we're talking today about his new record, Unperson. Wes, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, man. So thanks for making the time. Where are you calling in from?
Huntsville, Alabama.
Is that where you're from?
No, we moved here about 2 years ago. It's about an hour and a half south of Nash. I do have a bunch of family in the South, but I was pretty much Los Angeles my whole life.
Okay. So you're from California.
Yep, South
All right.
Bay, San Francisco, and then half my life in Los Angeles.
Nice. And then you guys recently went out to Nashville, just music related or what?
No, wife got a great aerospace job, and we were kind of talking about how to get out of LA for a bunch of years and settling down with a family. It seemed more financially sound to do it here, so I
Okay.
think we're in the right place to do all that now.
All right. So you guys moved from LA to Huntsville.
Correct.
Okay. And then you were just giving Nashville kind of as a location.
Yeah, most people, yeah, when I say Huntsville, Alabama, they're like, "Where the hell is that?" But yeah, just tip of the border, like Tennessee.
Nice. Right on. So can you tell me a little bit about like your background as a guitar player, musician? Tell me about that.
Yeah. I think I started playing back when I was about 10. So going on, I guess, quarter of a century now, which sounds kind of fucked up to say. Um, but yeah, I was super into Green Day, Blink-182 as a kid, and wasn't properly introduced to prog until my dad kind of came in and showed me, because he loves Rush and King Crimson and all those bands. So I think once he kind of turned me on to that, it was kind of like I'm going all in with that kind of stuff. Played a lot of Van Halen covers in middle school and high school with a band I put together, and then it just
Nice.
always kind of grew for me, just trying to release original music, and I guess I haven't stopped doing that.
Cool. So like, I mean, so I grew up listening to Rush too. Like, what is it about Rush that you consider prog, or how do you see Rush as fitting into maybe an influence, or do you see him as an influence?
Oh, massive influence, especially Alex Lifeson as a rhythm guitar player. But I guess listening to them as a kid, it was like, damn, you can make music like this.
Yeah.
'Cause it was almost like formless. You listen to something like 2112, and it's like this whole tapestry of music that they've created. It's that kind of got me going to like, wow, there's really no limits at all.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
super enticing at first. And now I listen to bands like Between the Buried and Me, and I feel like they're kind of carrying the torch of that in the modern way. So yeah, just having music with no rules is the kind of music I've always gravitated towards, and the music I want to write.
You know, Max, Waxamillion actually said he mentioned the Buried in Me as well as an example that he's actually taken quite a bit of influence from, in the sense of like no rules, let's just make music. Um, and admittedly, I just have not made the time.
Oh, you
Um,
have to
I need to, but
start with their early discog, and they're kind of like a not really hardcore, but just kind of straight ahead death metal, and then they kind of moved into prog once they hit like Alaska. But I think Colors is like a bible for progressive metal, just start to
nice.
finish. That's got to be top five record for me all time.
Okay. Well, so like, I mean, before we get into like prog, like, do you have any training, like, or is this all you're self-taught? Like, can you tell us about that?
Self-taught for about I guess 12, 13 years before I went to Musicians Institute, and that's where I met my current band members that play with me.
Okay.
It was a great place to go because I was one of the few people I was a local LA kid, but most of the students there were international.
Yeah.
So I lived with the guy, Yas Nomura. He was from Japan, could barely speak English, and my bass player, Chase Bryant, drummer Lang from China. So it was this weird kind of collective of all these just massive music nerds.
Yeah.
We couldn't really speak each other's language, but when we started to play together, it was like, man, these are the kids I've always wanted to be around. So it was kind of
Nice.
a great melting pot to just try new stuff.
And what was like, given the fact that you did have so much time before going to music school, what is it that you took from that experience there in terms of either academically or songwriting wise that you feel like has formed who you are?
I think I was always kind of had like a jazz aversion, so I was more of a rock guy my whole life, and I kind of wanted to understand more of the theoretical aspect of that, and just kind of, what does studying theory actually do for your playing? And kind of the takeaway was like, wow, I've been playing these certain types of things. I could put words to what I was doing
Yeah.
because I couldn't really articulate it. But yeah, it was nice to kind of communicate and surround myself with just not just guitar players too, put in a room with just drummers or just saxophone players because the way they look at the instrument is so drastically different. I'm looking at a fretboard all the time, and the way they can look at it is so different. So I was kind of taking all of that and just kind of just inputting into my brain as much as I could and
Yeah.
kind of trying to grow in that way. But yeah, challenging myself to play other genres of music. So I guess the music that I was writing at the time was a lot more experimental, which was nice as not just going out, I'm gonna write a prog record, I'm gonna write a metal section. It's like I just wake up every day and be like, I feel like writing an average white band type thing, and like go all in with their discography for like a week and study like funk guitar and like slowly just try to put all of that into my I guess vocabulary. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, like, I was kind of, before coming to the interview, trying to read a little bit about some of your thoughts that you've posted on the website and stuff like that. And it sounded like, on the one hand, that you guys have like sort of committed to the niche that is quote unquote prog music. And so I wanted to ask you, like, do you see yourself as a prog musician, or do you see Thrailkill as its own thing, kind of its own genre that you're trying to, push? Or do you see yourself contributing to like a bigger sort of tapestry that, how do you see the band Thrailkill?
That's a great question. I feel like I don't want to make music for a certain type of person because I think in the past it was always like I need to show my skills as a guitar player. But I think
Sure.
a lot of people that listen to this music aren't necessarily people that play instruments. So it's nice to kind of connect, I guess, musically with people that don't have like a technical backdrop at all. They can just listen to the music and enjoy it. So I guess that's kind of the goal as I've gotten older is to be able to share music with people that aren't looking at it from a purely technical standpoint, that they can just listen to it and absorb it and enjoy it. So I wouldn't want to be categorized as, oh, this is just shred guitar or whatever you want to put in a box. It's more just, I guess, formless music that people can enjoy.
But I mean, here's the crazy thing. I was looking around and I've seen people compare you to Tosin Abasi and Javier, and to me, those are pretty big names like in this space, especially like right now for like, people that are currently making, music. So, I mean, how does that make you feel, man? I mean, I feel like they're saying that in some ways, like you are part of that cutting edge as well.
I think that's awesome because I look up to those guys so much. And, yeah, I've listened to Animals Leaders for countless hours. So I guess some of it is seeped through too. But yeah, I never wanted to look at it like you got this generation of guys like post Satriani that were like, this guy's a rock guitar player and he's going to create rock guitar music. I've always wanted to be kind of separate from that and just create just music that I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So I think when I'm writing music, I'm doing it purely just for my own ears. It's like I woke up in a certain mood today and I'm gonna just go down that rabbit hole as much as I can. And whoever it comes out, that's just what it is at the end of the day. I guess technique aside, you
Yeah.
know.
Is that a mindset that you had to adopt? Because I've had a conversation with another musician on here. He's a piano player named Michael Keithson, and he was talking about how you kind of have to like shift the mindset from, some people do anyway, about thinking about like the end product and how that's going to be received, instead to like just the process of making the music itself, like kind of just like, okay, I'm just going to make, right, and whatever comes from the make is what that is. And you're sort of like a process sort of person, whereas like other people might be oriented towards, you're obsessed. How are people going to receive this? Is it going to be good? Are people going to respect me? And I wanted to ask you, like, is that a mind shift that you've ever had, or have you always been kind of a process guy that was just like dedicated to the craft without so much consideration about like end product.
I think there's like an ego death you go through as like a musician because everyone views themselves as a certain thing. Because
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to not compare yourself to other people. That's just what humans naturally do in
right.
any kind of job or any kind of work or any kind of creative endeavor too. But I feel like the older I've gotten, the less I've given a shit how people are going to view it. Because if I just focus on what I want to do, there's probably going to be plenty of other people that are going to like it too. Because with this genre of music, there's no rules at
Yeah,
all. So I feel like the more something's contrived creatively, it's like the less it becomes like true art. That makes sense. If I just get to create as much anything I want, it's probably going to come out way better than me focusing on how are people going to perceive it or you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that there's a lot of value in that, and something that probably needs to be discussed more in light of Instagram guitar playing, and the sort of the impression that can be created in younger musicians that maybe aren't quite as good, that everything is about perfection, and the only way that you're ever going to be, have any attention is if you have this absolutely perfectly polished product, and that it's like the perfect can become the enemy of the good, right? Like you
Yeah.
obsess about this reception that hasn't even been made yet, and that might keep you from actually finishing a song that was actually half decent.
No, I get it. I mean, you listen to something like Necrophagus, where it's probably recorded note by note, even though those guys crush it live, but it creates this kind of listening experience where it's absolutely perfect. I love listening to hyper edited albums, like
Yeah,
tech death stuff, but at the same time, I think as a guitar player, you get older, you start to discover guys like Greg Howe and Scott Henderson, where it's just more about the expression of it and it's not
yeah,
about the perfection of it. Because some
right,
of the nastiest guitar stuff I've ever heard is like the Hendrix Band of Gypsies live record. We're halfway through the first song, like he's hit his whammy bar so much the guitar's out of tune, and he's
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
find it with his ears, and that shit, how it's feeding back with the amplifier, like that stuff is so cool from a guitar player perspective. So I wish we kind of got more into that. There's like a sweet spot in like the 70s where kind of artists were experimenting more with like the psychedelia of what you can do with music. And now music is so hyper processed. I mean, you can just look at how something's mastered now. It's a brick waveform. All the
right.
dynamics of the music's gone, but you're trying to compete with everything else that's on the radio. So it's like you have to do certain things. You have to mix it right. You have to master it right. But I kind of wish there was less of a stigma of comparing between things because
Yeah,
especially our genre too. I mean, prog is always compared. This band sounds like a little bit of this band, but they have elements of that band. It's like I kind of hate talking about that because hopefully that artist is just doing exactly what they want to do. If they
yeah,
happen to sound like somebody else, it's just by chance.
yeah. It's like you're the brain doing that work of making connections, but it's not intentional on the part of the artist to be like emulating, like, hey, I hope you catch this reference, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like
yeah,
I've listened to Greg Howe's God, was Introspection for so many years, just in my CD changer in my car. That's one CD I never took it out. I never tried to learn any of his music, but a lot of people say, "Oh, you do that Greg Howe vibrato." It's like, well, yeah, because I've listened to it a million times.
right.
And when I used to drive Lyft and Uber in LA for about 10 years, and the radio station I used to live off of was KJazz 88.1. And every time I got riders in my car, they'd always kind of give me shit. What are you doing listening to jazz? It's like I'm going to school,
Yeah.
Not really transcribing any of this, but it more put yourself on like a musical diet, what you're putting into your brain, it's probably gonna translate whatever's coming out, you
Right,
know.
right. So, I mean, like at music school, can you describe like what that experience is like? Is it a lot of jamming? Is it a lot of organized education? Like, what is that process actually like?
It's a little bit of everything, I feel like, but it's also as you can get as much out of it as you want. So certain people can go all in with forming a band with people and making those kind of connections. That's kind of the route I went to,
Yeah,
because I was super focused on creating an original band and playing live shows. So that was kind of my focus out of it and building those connections. And other people would go in and just study. So they'd formally just play one, jazz all the time and study under, one instructor. So there's a lot of different avenues, and it was kind of whatever you wanted to get out of it.
Yeah.
So, but I think just being surrounded by music 24/7, because when you're not learning it, you're playing it. So I'd never played that much guitar in my life. So I think I got better so much quicker because the guitar was just always in my hands.
Right.
Not now where I can probably only pick up the guitar if I teach or want to write. So I kind of miss those days of just only focusing on one thing. So I hopefully I can tap into that, later in life too. But it was all about music then. Now kind of there's other things in life you kind of got to worry about. But it was great just to be surrounded by people that thought the same way and liked the same music as me. Because when you're growing
Right.
up in high school, you had maybe a few friends that liked Van Halen or something, but you go to music school and the fusion class and you reference one guitar player like Alan Holdsworth, and everybody sitting there knows him and they can play his licks and stuff. You're like, damn, these are the kids I need to be surrounded by because we're all wanting to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you're surrounded by people that you can like glean a lot of stuff from, right?
Mhm. And everybody does it so different too, whether it be, I guess, what even guitar they choose to play or what their signal chain is or what they're listening to. But I feel like the people that I looked up to the most were kind of putting themselves in very awkward scenarios. Like if they were a rock guitar player, they'd go and play in like a jazz band for like a week or two. And like that to me was like, wow, I should be doing the same thing. Kind of making myself uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
the more uncomfortable I made myself, the more I kind of grew as a musician.
Sure, sure. And it's cool to think about like how some of those influences kind of come into your own, because you are kind of picking all that stuff up, right? Like it's not like it's just like going into the ether, like it kind of imprints on you a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
So like that actually kind of brings up a good question about your guitar. Um, I see that you play a headless, is it Kiesel?
Yep.
And how'd you get the how did you get into the headless thing? Like,
Um, well, let's see. I think back when I started MI, I was looking into a bunch of companies that provided deals for students. So I remember Sir was like a 50% discount, but their wait time was like 6 to 8 months. And
wow.
what was cool, Carvin, back when they were before Kiesel, they were Carvin. They had a shop on Hollywood Boulevard next to the Mesa Boogie store. So I remember walking in there one day and meeting one of the guys and playing all the guitars and just playing this. It was like a carved top, like almost PRS style guitar, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my intro into carving. And then once they released, I guess they had the Holdsworth model for a while, and I was kind of always fascinated by what that would feel like,
Yeah.
what because it looks so kind of futuristic. I'm
Totally.
playing this kind of prog music. I felt like those two go kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
My favorite players use headless guitars. So once I tried that and traveled with the guitar, it was so much easier to not worry about, boarding it under the plane and just the how easy it was to just get it around. I
Yeah.
think the older I got, the setup got smaller and smaller. So it was almost natural that the guitar got smaller too. But I feel like, I mean, they play really good. The action can be super low and they kind of do what I need them to do. So that's why I've always kind of stuck with them.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Max Waximilian said the same thing about the travel. He was just like, man, it just makes travel so much easier.
Heard so much
But
horror stories about guitars boarded under planes and they open them up and the fucking thing's busted and you're just like, that's a nightmare for any
oh
guitar player.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Heartbreak, right? But like, so I wanted to ask you, how'd you meet Maximilian or Wax?
Uh, he asked me to do a guitar solo on one of his past EPs.
Yeah,
I'd known his music online and always thought he's kind of doing his own thing, which is cool. But he asked me
totally.
to do a solo and I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Would love
yeah.
to. So that, and then we met at NAM actually, a couple of years back. There's this the bottom floor at NAM is all the kind of like lesser known brands. And there's this one like European guitar company. The only reason people were there is because they had a keg of beer. So I met them down there and we were just practically drinking every day, walking around and just kind of fucking around. So that's when we met. Just, yeah, really, really cool dude
Yeah,
from Austria. My drummer's from Germany. So I've always kind of like those people over from
To-
Europe. Got well.
Totally. So I actually noticed that it looks like you guys track the drums in Germany, is that right?
Yeah, over in Darmstadt, where our drummer's from.
And so were you there for the drum tracking?
Yeah, so I flew out Christmas time. I was there for about a week, and I sent him the tracks to learn about 6 months prior, and he had only really practiced them for about 2 weeks before. So that was I was always kind of pissed at him for that, but I think it came out better because he was able to improvise more. So it wasn't as strict to what I had sent him program wise, because he's
Yeah.
not a double kick drummer either way. And a lot of the stuff that I program is pretty busy as most guitar players program drums, but it
Yeah.
was cool to kind of see him interpret it in a different way. And same thing with the bass player when he flew out here to track, because he had prepared to the programming. And once the drummer came in and kind of flipped it on its head, we had to create completely new bass lines for the record too, listen back to its fills and see where the kicks were. So it was hard to track, but I think it was rewarding in the end because the demos and the final product are like two completely different records if you listen to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. No, I've really enjoyed, well, I'm not sure how it came, but I saw your video that was like the tapping section that you recently put out on, I think it's track 3 from Unperson. Uh the name of the track is escaping me, which I'm terrible about. But the point was is that I was just really kind of like impressed with that like technique of yours, and I wanted to like, as I've listened to more of it, it sounds like there's a lot of tapping, throughout your music. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like it seems like you've got that technique in specific, like really developed. Um, can you tell me a little bit about that, or like any sort of like technique that you feel like is, something that you really focus on?
I guess tapping's always been, I guess, fun from day one. When you
Yeah,
figure out how to play Eruption as a kid, you're like, you know, it's like all your. I remember hearing Eruption for the first time, and like all the hair on my arms like stood straight up, and I was like, that's what I want to do.
yeah,
But I feel like you listen to more guys like Stanley Jordan and guys that are more unconventional, even bands like Minus the Bear, kind of those math rocky TT&G type
right,
where they use open tunings and they tap all over the place. So the more I discovered how many different ways you can use tapping unconventionally, that always kind of inspired me to be like, man, there's once again no rules and there's a lot of open strings in there too. So I'm always trying to, deal with octaves and using the guitar to its full potential because I feel like guys like Alex Lifeson from Rush, there's open strings all over the place and just how
right,
the guitar is set up. It's like, why not take advantage of it? And
yeah,
tapping is
yeah.
just a really easy way to do that, I guess.
So, I mean, are you into the alternate tuning thing too?
Yeah, when I went to college, I was mostly playing a lot of acoustic guitar. I went to University of Santa Cruz before I went to Musicians Institute to study economics of all things, and then became a, idiot musician who didn't make any money. So it was like kind of the irony of what came before. But when I went to college, all I did was take my acoustic guitar. I would pretty much just only play in open tunings. I'd go out into the woods and just play all the time. So that's when my, I guess, love for that kind of guitar came
Yeah,
listening to guys like Leo Kottke and Michael Hedges.
yeah,
So I've always been fascinated with that. So it's nice to kind of transfer that to the electric too.
right, right.
But yeah,
Um,
FACGAE has been my favorite open tuning as of late.
FACGAE. So like,
You take the first string up a half step, you drop the D down full step, and then you got the B down
it's like
a
an F
full
major
step.
7 with a 9 on it.
It's like an F major nine, open nine
Yeah,
chord.
F
Yeah.
major 9. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's dope. That's cool. So, I mean, how many of the tracks on Person are in alternate tuning?
None of them. It's all standard.
All standard. Nice. Um, So, and that was actually, you kind of answered the question before I got to ask it, but I wanted to kind of clarify, like, do you do the programming or the engineering for like the demos and then you send that out and you guys track the stuff with the musicians, or how does that work?
So for this most recent album, it was yeah, creating everything from scratch in Logic Pro, programming the drums, all the synthesizers, all the MIDI stuff too, and then sending it out to the drummer. He does his own take. Now we have acoustic drums on the record, so now I need to retrack all the rhythm guitars And then the bass player comes in and we take out all the MIDI bass and we have an actual bass. But all those kind of original MIDI programmings, they stay. That's all just pretty much orchestral layers, all the keyboards,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
kind of arpeggiators that you're hearing. That's stuff that just stays in there. And
yeah,
I don't mix any of it. I send it off to somebody else because I never trust my ears for mixing.
yeah.
I feel like you can't operate on your own child, when it comes to that kind of stuff. So it's nice to have an extra set of ears, even with like an extra set of ears for mastering as well. Because I feel like the more people that put their, engineering prowess on it, it's only going to help in the end.
So you guys did the mastering in, was it Nashville? Where'd you guys do the mastering?
Mastering was Ermin Hamadovik. He's out of Australia. He's done the last couple records for us, and yeah, I feel like he's kind of always been like the prog metal mastering guy. He's done Animals and Periphery and Pliny and all those. And that's how I found out about him, just through the internet. But he does mastering really well. I know it's all analog gear, and the mixing was Adam Bentley. He's a guitarist for Arch Echo.
Okay, all right, nice. So when was the last time that you guys were on tour?
Touring, it's been a really long time. We did the stint with Haken back in 2017, which was awesome. And then we played a festival played Euroblast back in 2019 before the pandemic.
For the pandemic?
So
Wow.
it's been 5 years since we've done anything, which is kind of such a flip flop to before. When we were all going to school. We were playing like 2, 3 shows a week. So, once I got married, it's like all those live performances. I miss it so much,
Yeah.
but hopefully with this new album, we're going to be able to do at least 2 tours for it, which I'm looking
Nice.
forward to.
Nice. And you mentioned offline that you guys are thinking about a tour next year.
Yeah, hopefully something stateside and in Europe too, which would be awesome because I feel like these songs need to be played live too. There's so
Yeah.
many other records we've released since our last tour. It's like we have so much stuff to pull from.
Nice. Nice. Um, do you guys have like any bands that you're thinking about touring with?
I feel like we're kind of like a open tapestry when it comes to music since we're instrumental. So I mean, I would play with tech death bands, I would play with prog bands, and I guess there's not really anybody I wouldn't play with.
Can I ask, like, just as someone who's not, in the industry, like, how does that actually end up working out? Like, bands coming together and kind of touring with each other. Is it a function of people inviting each other, or is it schedules work out? Like, how does all that sort of come together?
It can be. Usually it revolves around like the touring cycle of whatever the headliner is, and they're going to be reaching out to the agency that books it. So it's nice to have the middleman, but being independent, we've been independent for so many years. It's kind of we have to do it all and forge those connections. So yeah, but once you're kind of in, everybody knows each other. So
Yeah.
yeah, we did this with them, and then oh yeah, I know them, and it's just who you know. I guess that's kind of everything and whatever kind of business, right?
Yeah, very much the case. Well, so one thing that I actually wanted to kind of dig in with you a little bit about is like, you had talked about the concept of this music kind of having no rules, but I wanted to ask you, like, what is your actual songwriting approach? Like, when you're thinking about something, like, where are you finding that inspiration from? And then, kind of walk me through your process a little bit.
It's such a tough question to answer because I feel like it changes every single time I sit down and write. But I guess if I'm trying to sketch out an idea for a record, I'll come up with a concept, and I'll usually let that concept kind of guide whatever kind of music comes out of it. Because it's really tough when you have no lyrics. Like, how can I convey some kind of philosophical meaning to somebody just with song titles and just what's happening tonally in music?
Yeah.
Yeah, it usually starts in the DAW with a certain type of motif or theme, and I'll try to write as much as I can, blowing that one idea out of the water, and then I'll just click save. I'll wake up the next morning, I'll listen back to it, and I'll be like, whatever kind of mood I'm in that day, I have to kind of let that drive. So I guess that's why when you listen to this kind of music, there's all these kind of jumps. That's just how I was feeling on that one day. You hear something really heavy and then something very ambient the next. It's like, I guess I was pissed off then, and the next day I woke up, I was feeling a little better. I got the right amount of caffeine in my system or something. So I don't really like to put any kind of limitations on it at all. So it's nice to just, I guess, get lost in that process of recording too.
Yeah.
Sitting there and playing like 1,000 different guitar solos over the same chord progression. And eventually, if you're sitting with something for a couple hours, something's going to hit your brain and be like, wow, what was that? And then just kind of go with it, you know. But it's hard kind of pushing the off switch because you
Yeah.
could go anywhere for as long as you wanted to. But I've never wanted to be stagnant in one thing. So no, it's a tough question to answer. I don't really even know if I'm articulating it in the right way for you.
Well, I mean, you said something though that was actually like really, it really kind of struck me because like what you said was you might be playing the same or a different solo over the same song for, a couple hours. And it seems like what you're really saying is that like you're like looking to discover the solo, like,
Yeah, exactly.
and that sort of insight I feel like is massive because, as certainly as a trained listener, but I think for people that are untrained, there's probably an assumption that every single decision is like super conscious, like it's this product of your absolute design from A to B, right? And it sounds more like, and I've kind of experienced this myself where it's just like you're like looking for something that sounds good, that's going to work, that you feel like rocks, right? Like, and you don't necessarily know what that is at the
Not at
beginning.
all. Yeah.
You're just kind of coming and you're just like, I'm going to play and I hope that something comes from this. And something will, but at the beginning, like you wouldn't know what it was until it kind of fleshes out a little bit. And now you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing here, right? Like
No,
it kind of
exactly.
takes on some life. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel the more you experiment with something, your brain's gonna kind of figure it out. I talk about this with my wife all the time. If I'm struggling with any kind of composition, she's like, go do something mundane. I'll go play golf all the time, like by myself. And like while
Nice.
I'm not sitting in front of my DAW with my guitar, I feel like my brain's slowly kind of figuring it out, even though I'm not thinking about it.
Right.
Because I feel like I have to be away from it. If I force it too much, it's gonna come out either contrived or not the way it needs to be.
Right.
Like some of the best things I've ever written have been completely organic in the moment because it's almost like a Jackson Pollock. You're throwing all this shit against the wall and there's like one speck that looks or sounds really good. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to chase that, whatever that was, you know.
Right. Right. And I love that. I love the idea of, yeah, it's like all of this stuff kind of comes out. And then really what it is, it's kind of like at the end of the day, man, what it is your choices, right? Your selections as the artist, as the producer, as the engineer. Every single choice that you make is a matter of your taste. And the rest of us like it, right? Like that's what the experience kind of is. You're like, I like this tune, I like this solo, these are the chords I put together. And the rest of us are like, that is badass, right? Like,
I mean, it's awesome that people can like it too, but there's plenty of people that, write it off too. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like if everyone liked it or disliked it, you'd be doing something wrong. But I almost feel like you have to piss some people off with the decisions you make compositionally. It's almost like there's things I listen to in music. Like the first time I heard Mr. Bungle, it was almost like laughable. But then I
right,
really started diving into it. And I was like, wow, Mike Patton's a fucking genius, you know? Because he makes you think like, oh, you can do whatever you want in it. You know, music can be funny, it can be virtuosic, but I just feel like it has to be exciting. I mean, the same way I view like a movie for the first time. If I'm
yeah,
not on the edge of my seat and it's exciting and I don't know what's going to happen, like that's the way I want to listen to music too.
right.
You know,
No,
I
I
want to
like
have no idea what the artist is going to throw at me.
you said that in that documentary, on the Unperson documentary, that idea of what is the point of listening to a song if you can predict what is going to happen, right? Like
Yeah, totally.
if you already know the song, then why are you going to listen to it, right?
I guess
uh,
with this kind of music,
but I
if one of my favorite bands releases a new record, I want to sit there with my headphones by myself with my eyes closed, and I want my mind to be blown,
Yeah.
because I've never heard anything like it. And if it's kind of underwhelming, it's almost kind of a letdown.
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah. I had that, I hate to say this. I had that experience with a big band that I was a fan of. I'll say it was Tool's record, the fear inoculum.
Yeah.
I
Took them so long to fucking put it out.
It took him so long, and truthfully, I felt like that record, to me anyway, it sort of sounded like kind of B-side ideas from maybe Lateralus or 10,000 Days. Not as a knock on Adam or the guys at all, but just kind of like almost something like it's like I've heard some of these ideas before, and that to me kind of did feel, a little underwhelming. And ever since then, it's just kind of been like, darn man, like I think back on the days of like Undertow,
Undertow
the
is
days of
one of my
like,
favorite Tool albums of all time. Yeah.
dude, it's
Very
the
underappreciated Tool album when you think about it too. Everyone talks about 10,000 Days. It's like, no, dude, Undertow is where it's at.
Undertow is where it's at. Yeah, I was gifted Undertow. A buddy of mine just like gave it to me, man. I'm not even sure that he knew what he was giving me, but he he blessed me with this crazy expansion of mind. At the time I guess I was like 12 or 13, but in
Those are
any
the true
case,
friends you got to hang on to. The friend that gives you that one album, they're just like, dude, listen to this shit. And then your
no
whole
joke.
world is just opened up, you know?
No joke. Yeah, another one that was kind of like that was Radiohead's OK Computer.
Hmm.
Just kind of that really experimental type of stuff. But yeah, man, so like you said that you've already got another EP in the works, is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of weird to already be sitting on something that's done. And who knows if I'll keep writing it, but I feel like it's done, you know? I did an EP a couple of years ago during the pandemic. It's called Detach, and that was kind of like just to myself, let's do something, program it, and just not use live musicians, like only record the guitar. So I
Yeah.
did the same type of thing while I was waiting for these guys to record Unperson. And before I knew it, over a couple months, I had 20 minutes of music with 6 songs. So, but I've already contacted a drummer. I don't want to say his name yet, but he's going to do drums on it too. So I'm just kind of waiting on him for him to get off tour, and then we're going to go record drums for that. So hopefully it's out
Nice.
early next year.
Nice. So like I guess that leads me to, where do you see all of this going? Like what do you want to see this lead to?
I just, I guess I'm blessed to just be able to play music and do my own original thing. I don't think that's ever going to stop. I don't see myself like closing the door on composing music just because I'm so obsessed with it. It's like,
Yeah.
what do I want to do in my free time? It's like I want to write music because I love doing that. So I don't really look at the business side of things. It's hard not to think of when you see a lot of your friends, touring all over the world and getting all these accolades. It's like, as long as I can continue to just compose music and put it out there for people to listen to, like that's all I could really ask for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to tour more, and I'd love to travel the world because every time we've done it, it's so cool. And you meet people that are complete strangers, and they're like, "Oh, I've been listening to your music for like the last 10 years," and they'll tell you all these stories about how their music has affected them. And it's like, man, that's so fucking awesome.
Yeah.
There's other people out there halfway across the world that are just like sitting and listening to what you did in your room one day.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that you probably have like a built-in European audience, right? By merit of the fact that, your drummer's German, is that right?
Yeah, he plays in a lot of like Turkish folk bands. So
Nice.
he started playing drums when he was like 3 or 4 years old, playing these big, massive like Turkish drums that you'd walk around with at like wedding ceremonies. But his
Yeah.
dad's like a monster musician on the it's like the Turkish guitar, like it's like the sus. It's like a 4-string guitar, but
Okay.
it's all fretless. And I guess part of it's fretless and some of it's fretted. But that's how he's came to know music. So he's always kind of played in that scene, and it's cool the flavor he kind of brings to progressive music too. I guess I could relate it to kind of Tigran Hamasyan, if you've ever heard of him. He's got
I
that kind of ethnic flair in his music because he's
right.
Armenian. So rhythmically, there's a lot of those things happening underneath this kind of progressive music you're hearing.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of dug that about his drumming style because I feel like it's kind of out of left field. Most people expect double kick, balls to the wall, like super technical, and he's just kind of playing this kind of fusion stuff underneath that I think really complements what we're doing.
I completely agree. And I actually really like, it's almost like he gives space, right? Like kind of because kind of what you were saying, it's not a bunch of, just crazy double kick. And
which I
just
do
yeah,
love. I mean, I love listening to those extremely technical drummers
sure.
like Alice Rudinger and the guys that can pull it off. I mean, I'm
Right.
I'm a big fan of that too. And most of the times when I program drums, it sounds like that. But
Yeah,
I'm glad I can hand it off to a guy where he can kind of put his own flair on it.
totally, totally. Yeah. Well, so in terms of your like social media and stuff, like where are you currently posting this music at?
I guess it's videos or Instagram and Facebook, and all the music's up on Spotify. It's just through like an online distributor that shoots it out to Apple and all that kind of stuff and
Okay.
monetizes it all in one place. But I think when I was younger, I'd care more about posting more frequently. I think the
Yeah.
older I got, the more I just saw what social media has become. It's like I don't give a shit as much anymore. And that probably hurts my reach. Um, but yeah, it's just I don't really take too much into it like I used to. Like, oh man, I gotta post and I gotta show people all these crazy licks. It's like I just kind of stopped caring the older I got, you know. Didn't occupy as much of my time and attention. And it's yeah, it's probably hurting me at the end. Could probably post more and do more, but it's all about what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that was the thing that I wanted to ask was like, how do you like kind of in general keep in contact with your audience? Is it through Instagram or
Yeah, mostly Instagram and Facebook. We do have a Bandcamp too, where I can talk through people there. But yeah, I have a website. People send me messages through there, so it's kind of all the social media big ones that people can message me through. So
nice,
I,
right
tr- I
on.
try to make an effort to message everybody back, too. So it's not just out there in the ether.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
someone's taking time out of their day to hit me up about what I'm doing, that's amazing.
Nice, man. Nice. So you also teach, is that right?
Yeah, I've been teaching online for the last couple of years. I used to teach in person when I lived in LA to like little kids that just picked up the instrument. And that was fun. And it was cool when the kids were interested in it, but a lot of the times it kind of felt like babysitting
Yeah.
too. But I think most of the people I teach now are really into creating their own, progressive music. I guess that's why they hit me up to learn. So yeah, I love when students are I get to write with them in the DAW, open up the computer, and we'll take their riffs and just kind of program to it or just see where it can go. It's a lot of fun for me too, because a lot of the times they're into super obscure stuff and I'm inspired with what they're bringing to the table. So it's kind
Yeah.
of, I don't really look at it as teaching. It's more just like kind of hanging out.
Right. 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 So then one thing that I, kind of want to ask you is like part of the thought process, here at the Unfettering is talking to musicians about how they make it work as a musician kind of financially without getting into specific about numbers or anything, more just like what is the sort of tapestry or menagerie of things that you do to make it as a full-time musician if you consider yourself a full-time musician.
Yeah, I think back when I was younger, I just supplemented with jobs I didn't want to work. And I felt like that was okay because like I'm still being able to do what I want. And the older I got, and I guess the revenue streams got more, I could focus just all my time on music, which is where I'm at now, which is great. But I guess it took a while to get to that to get to this point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it can't always just be in one place. If you're looking for your revenue in just one place, I almost feel like now with the internet, you have to have your hands in so many different things. I think selling tabs has been huge for me because it's all digital and
Yeah.
there's no overhead. So it's always nice when somebody buys a shirt from Europe, but I still have to pay a bunch for shipping and stuff. And so I love when people buy digital goods because there's just no overhead. I can spend the time tapping out the record while I'm writing it and then it's done. Send them off a file. And so that's, I guess, yeah, trying to implement that as much just with less overhead. But
Yeah.
yeah, merch, revenue streams, selling records, tabs, and teaching, kind of all of the above.
Nice, nice, right on. So on the tabbing thing, you said that you tab out while you're recording.
Usually tab it out after the record's done.
Okay.
Sometimes the demos from demo to final, some of the guitar takes will be so drastically different. So once the record's like mastered, I'll sit there and go and relearn it. I mean, I'll forget half the stuff I played. So I'm like using my ear. I'm like, the fuck did I do there? And there'll be some really weird chord shape with a bunch of chorus and reverb on it. And I'll just like, I don't want to say it out loud, but sometimes I'll probably fudge. It won't be exactly how I recorded it, just
Yeah.
because I physically just can't even hear what I was doing, trying
Yeah.
to get as close as possible. But yeah, it's on those super weird extended shapes, we're spanning a massive number of frets, but yeah, I should probably tab right after I write more. Um, but it's yeah, it's pretty exact to what I tracked most of the time.
I love, especially like in the guitar space, how like the concept of writing is pretty vague insofar as it's more of like the concept of I have an idea, right? Like, and then I've recorded that idea. And then people kind of get the record and they imitate it, but we don't have like written music like piano. Like it's that's not the regular way of communicating guitar ideas, right? Like, and so like when you write a song as a guitar player, right? Like it's more like, well, yeah, I played this stuff, right? And you would tell somebody this is what I played in a different way. And I guess tabs is kind of an approximation of that. But do the tabs that you write contain notation as well, so you can kind of detect the rhythm stuff, or what?
Yeah. All everything's there, so you can it's all MIDI, so you can transpose it into
Oh,
whatever clef
nice.
you want. So I've actually written a bunch of piano stuff too. And I had a guy a couple albums ago, I sent him the MIDI for it. And it was all there for him to read too, which is really neat. And his comments back were like, wow, I've never really seen someone write piano like this. It's like, yeah, I'm not a piano player. This is just like how my ears are listening to it. And he said a lot of the shapes were really weird for him, but I guess that's just a guitar player's shapes thrown to a piano player. And it would be
Right,
the same thing if he showed me a chord. I'd be like, how the fuck do I do that on guitar?
right, right. But you know what is interesting about it is though, like, and I think that there's like some insight to gain though, is that like at bottom, that's like the fundamental expression is harmony. Like, you read like old classical music and you don't like, I don't think that anyone trains specifically to analyze it like you would like a jazz song, like identifying chords and identifying chord functions. But
Mhm.
you totally can, right?
Yeah.
Like, and at the end of the day, like it's all stuff that we're all working with, right? 5-1 relationship, 2-5-1, like different resolution type of concepts that everyone kind of shares. And so it's just interesting kind of conceptually to think about how we kind of communicate what I played to you, right? Like this is what I played. You want to play it, right? Like here's how you play it. Pianists would write it down on a piece of paper. We have tabs and we've got recordings and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's almost like we're not looking, we have to have some kind of language to communicate it. So that's just what the language is. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to learn the language, but don't really rely on it to write. Because when I'm
Right.
writing, I'm just like, this shit sounds cool, and I'm just gonna go with that. I'm not focusing on it's this certain chord and I have to play that kind of harmony over it all. Because I feel like a lot of kids will ask questions like, what scale do you use over this? It's like, dude, I'm not thinking about that stuff at all. I'm just like, this sounds really cool. And then I guess if I want to explain it later, I can in a musical language, but
Sure.
it should just be something you listen to and digest. That's it. Because
Right.
that's the true language. It doesn't have to be talked about. You just listen to it.
Totally. That reminds me of some insight that Tim Henson gave in an interview where he was like, the best solos are the ones that you can whistle,
Yeah.
like it's
Singable.
exactly. It's something about it that's just it's just an expression, right? Like it wasn't this like pre-programmed thought from A to B. I want to play these notes in this scale,
Yeah, of course.
It's not like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it grooves with whatever's going on underneath it. Some of my favorite solos are like keyboard solos where I can sit there,
Totally.
yeah, and like whistle the whole thing through it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to transcribe it or anything. I just want to like take that motif into whatever I'm doing in the moment. You know.
Right. 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 So, all right, man. Well, this has been a really, really great, conversation. I want to ask, for everyone listening, like, what should we be keeping an eye out for? We've got the new record, Unperson, just came out last month. You've got some new music coming out. You've got a tour date coming up. Like, where should we be paying attention to that stuff?
Just yeah, all the social medias, I guess, Instagram and Facebook. But I yeah, I got a kid on the way in about less than a month, so it's gonna be fun.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Gonna be a
Yeah.
lot of shit diapers thrown around the house. So hopefully, actually got a really small set of headphones for the kids. So hopefully at night I can set them up in the crib when I can just kind of mess around on guitar too. Because I imagine the compositions and the music, it's gonna drastically change once they're born. So I'm really looking forward to that because I don't know what it's like to be a father, any of that stuff. So that's exciting to me to think about writing music with this other thing you have to like pay attention to 24/7 in the world, you know?
Do you know what the sex is?
No, we're waiting for birth. So
Nice, nice, cool. That's the way most people have been born, right?
yeah.
Um,
It seems weird because most of my friends now, everyone knows. It's like 90% of people, I guess,
yeah,
know what they want to know. It's like it's all gonna be a crapshoot either way, you know?
totally, totally. The one thing that I've found really cool is thinking about kids as inspiration for music, and whether it be kind of, I think what you said earlier, you said you come up with a concept and then you try to come up with music. I think it's, a child ends up being a really good source of inspiration in that way, right? About concepts and stuff like that. But yeah, guys, this has been Wes Thrailkill of the band Thrailkill. Please check out his new record, Unperson. Check him out on Spotify and any of the social medias. He's on Facebook and Instagram. Um, and yeah, he's going to be on tour with his band coming up here probably next year. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for listening in. We will see you guys in the next one.